Hey everyone, welcome back. If you run a business in New York and you buy or sell goods, you probably dealt with sales tax exemption certificates. But a lot of business owners don't understand how these work, and mistakes can be costly. Let's make sure you're doing this right. First, a sales tax exemption certificate is a document that allows a buyer to purchase goods or services without paying sales tax. The buyer is basically claiming that the purchase qualifies for an exemption, usually because they're buying for resale, or because they're an exempt organization, or because the item will be used in a way that's exempt from tax. When you accept an exemption certificate from a customer, you're not collecting sales tax on that sale. But here's the thing, if that certificate is invalid, or if the exemption doesn't actually apply, you're on the hook. The state will come after you, the seller, for the uncollected tax. So let's talk about how to protect yourself. First, make sure the certificate is complete. A valid New York's exemption certificate, Form ST-120, is the most common one. It needs to have all the required information filled in. That means the buyer's name and address, their sales tax ID number if they're claiming a resale exemption, a description of the property or services being purchased, the reason for the exemption, and of course the buyer's signature. If any of that isn't missing, the certificate is not valid and you're not protected. Second, make sure the exemption actually applies to what you're selling. A resale certificate is only valid if the buyer is actually going to resell the item. If they're buying office supplies for their own use and handing you a resale certificate, that's not a valid exemption. If you know or should know that the exemption doesn't apply, accepting the certificate doesn't protect you. Third, keep the certificates on file. You need to retain exemption certificates for at least 3 years after the due date of the return for the period when the sale was made. If you get audited and you can't produce the certificate, you're going to owe the tax. Fourth, be careful with blanket certificates. A blanket certificate covers multiple purchases over time rather than a single transaction. While these are convenient, they're also riskier. Make sure the blanket certificate is properly filled out and it actually covers the type of purchases being made. Now, what if you're the buyer using exemption certificates? Only use them when the exemption legitimately applies. If you're buying something for resale, great. Use your resale certificate. But if you're buying something for your own use, you owe sales tax. Using an exemption certificate improperly is fraud, and the state does pursue these cases. Also, keep track of what you're buying with the exemption certificates. If you buy something tax-free for resale, but then end up using it in your own business, you owe use tax on that item. We'll talk more about this in another video. If you're not sure whether an exemption applies, or you want to make sure your certificate procedures are solid, getting this right up front saves you a lot of headaches in an audit. As always, work with a tax professional who understands New York sales tax. The rules are detailed and the stakes in audit are real. See you in the next one.